like Rav Cyril said. The Rambam's the Iker. Most of these cases we find the Rambam is basically the Shulchan Aruch for all the Torah. The Shulchan Aruch itself, the actual Shulchan Aruch, only talks about a few topics, right? It doesn't talk about Milchamos, doesn't talk about Tum and Tara, doesn't talk about building a Beis Hamikdash, right? And even then, so we have. Thank you, Korean. Thank you, Rizid. Thank you, Nosei Kalim, for pointing out here and there. Hagos Maimonios, here and there, little machlokuses with the Rambam, right? How often do we still stick with the Rambam?
80 to 90%.
Yeah, most of the time. Okay, we don't have to worry. You stick to the Rambam. Like when I asked Rabbi Rabinovich about so how are you going to do your tcheles? Okay, now we have a new mitzvah. How should you tie your tcheles onto your tzitzis? Yes, there are many opinions. You should know. The rabbi likes the Ravad's opinion. Most of us, when we first found tcheles, we like the Vilna Gaon's opinion. I still have most of my tzitzis are still Vilna Gaon style, right? Even though he didn't have tcheles, he describes how to do it. So we like the Vilna Gaon way. But others say stick with the Rambam. The same Rambam who has all these positive traditions that Ori Paskin. It's in the Halacha book. Here's how you tie it. Although I don't believe anybody is actually tying their tzitzis, quote unquote, like the Rambam, is doing it like the Rambam says, because the Rambam says you make 3 wines and then a knot. 3 wines and a knot. 3 wines and a knot. That's how you do it. And they don't tie knots. They do it Yemenite style, which somehow they fit into the Rambam. Like they make 3 wines around. They take the cheles and winds it around 3 times, and then they put it through or something like that, so it's sort of knotted. But that's not what the Rambam says. Rambam says make 3 wines and a knot. 3 wines and a knot. So I don't get it.
How do you make the knots there?
I don't know, but you have to make a knot. You have to somehow make a knot. 3 wines and then tie the knot. Usually, I think with all the others ones, because Rambam says just the winding is done with the tcheles, but the knotting is done with all the strings, like the Shulchan Aruch has, for example. So there was a number of things I'd like to mention. There's a Yemenite Rosh Hashiva here. There's certain things that you see that all the Yemenites do, but that's not the Rambam. Okay, the way they tie the tzitzis and them heating up soup on Shabbos, which is totally legitimate. There is an opinion of Rishonim, but the Rambam's against heating up soup, chicken, anything, whether it's fully cooked or not fully cooked, whether it's lach or yavesh, right? Hilchos Shabbos. The Rambam does not allow reheating anything on Shabbos. He's the most machmir. Okay, the Yemenites heat up the soup on Shabbos, right? They take a soup out of the fridge. That's I think the Rashba and other Rishonim. That's not the Rambam.
So the Rambam will have not agreed even with the platter? The
Rambam forbids heating food on Shabbos. The only food you can eat hot on Shabbos is food that was kept hot on Shabbos. It's explicit in Hilchos Shabbos there. The Rambam only says ein bishul achar bishul is pater avol aser. Okay, right. It's not a heter to do bishul achar bishul. And other times at the end of Hatmani, he talks about keeping food hot. He says the whole classic thing, putting food on top of the water pot that's on the heat source, on the blech or whatever it is on Shabbos. Okay, you have a pot of cholent or a pot of water, and you want to put a pot of cholent on a pot of water on either of those. By cholent, I mean generic hot food. So the Rambam says you can do so in order to keep the food hot. To keep one pot of water hot, you put it on top of the cholent, or you put it on top of a pot of water. And keep the cholent hot, you put it on top of another cholent or on top of the hot water that's on the blech. But you cannot take something that's stam and moli bochom. You can't just heat up stam. Something that's no heat whatsoever. Kal v'chomer something came out of the fridge. In the old days, never refrigerator. Everything that they're reheating was, I guess room temperature, whatever was outside. Although we're going to see an example here. We're going to talk about how do you comates the oil. First one it gives a component of oil. We're going to see this. So you have to take a comets out of the oil, and it's very tricky. How do you? I know you take comets of lavona. That's a powder. That's a spice. Or comets of flour with a little bit of oil on it. You take like that. The Kohen can do it. But how do you take a comets of oil? It's a liquid.
Yeah.
So we're going to see who was it? Rabbeinu Yerucham, whoever it was, who's the parish, Rabbeinu Gershom, at the bottom there in Menachos. It's not Rashi. It's in the fine print at the bottom. It's not Rabbeinu Chananel. He says you have to somehow yikpenu, which in modern Hebrew means freeze it. I mean, something you have to congeal the oil so you could take it out. And others say, no, you somehow squeeze the oil directly into a kli. But there's no kli that's a komet size. Huh?
Maybe the reed?
The reed, yeah, it's the reed. I think it's the reed. Whatever, whichever Rishon is also printed classically with a lot of Masechtas, so there's some don't even have Rashi. Usually it's Rashi and then Rabbeinu Chananel or the reed or someone else, So he says yikpenu. That's the word he has, yikpenu. No aleph there, yikpenu, but it means you congeal it. So freezing things was usually they didn't have an option. Refrigeration and freezing. Well, if you're lucky, it's cold enough outside. Eretz Yisrael, it's barely cold enough to refrigerate. Maybe there's like 6 nights a year where if you put your food outside, it's cold enough for refrigeration, right? It's lower than 40 degrees outside. That's basic, you need to get close to freezing in order to refrigerate, just not freeze. And some nights it's even cold enough that's freezing. I've been checking it. Basically, here in Israel, since we moved here, there's about 1 night a year in Kochav Yaakov where the temperature is below freezing, right? In Jerusalem also, it's only maybe 1 night a year the temperature goes below the freezing point, right? So we see that the Rambam is very machmir with regards to reheating food on Shabbos. Okay? Rambam himself, I'm not saying there aren't other opinions. The mainstream opinion of the kashrus organizations is that there are many ways to reheat food on Shabbos. A kedera blech, once you have something on the heat source and itself is it's like a pot of water. So putting food directly on that, anything that's already been previously cooked, you can do that. That's how they reheat foods all over the place. They use a kedera blech. The caterers in the hotels, they have these pans, right, with water, heat source underneath, water, and then the thing they're reheating. So you put the thing reheating on the top of the water vessel that's already hot, steam pans. There's all sorts of ways to reheat food on Shabbos according to most Rishonim. I'm just saying the Rambam strictly prohibits any reheating of food on Shabbos. It's explicit. Okay, so these are things that we got off topic. There's a lot of things that people say that's the way the Rambam did it, except it's not the way the Rambam did it. The way the Yemenites tie their tzitzis and the way they reheat their food. And there was a third thing that's not the Rambam. All the Yemenites do it, but it's not the Rambam. Nothing wrong with what they're doing, but I guess the Rambamists who do like the Rambam. Okay. Let's see, and I forgot the third thing. I don't know. Also, the way they read the Targum is also, with all due respect, it's incorrect.
It's against the Yerushalmi. It should be by heart.
Not just that; it's that the way they have pisuk, they put in like commas into the Targum, which totally change the meaning of things. As we said before. Every time there's a tavir, they have a pisuk, but where the tipcha, they don't. So they change shnayim u'shloshim elef v'chamesh meot. Shnayim u'shloshim elef. That's where the tipcha is, and there's tavir before that. So it's 32,000. Shnayim u'shloshim elef v'chamesh meot. The way they do it is shnayim u'shloshim elef v'chamesh meot, which means 30,502. So it's totally they totally change it every time you have an example like that. So they make the tavir a bigger stop than the tipcha, which is the exact opposite of what the pshat is. And every time they do that, they put a pisuk, or they make the revi'ah stronger than the pashta and the zakef. That's a more complex example. But if you make the revi'ah is a lesser stop than the zakef, it's subservient to it, revi. So they make the revi'ah, also a bigger stop. So that leads to a lot of problems. Okay?
There's nothing grammar books I saw they are put in the same classification.
Well, they shouldn't, because revi'ah is less than a zakef. It's the zakef is a melech, okay, and the revi'ah is a mishneh, as they say, and the mishneh is less than below the melech, right? So it's a problem. Okay, what are you gonna do?